Hi guys, I'm here with Vukasin, who has a very interesting Twitter account, and I'm glad I've got him on because I literally sent him a message less than 2 hours ago and said, do you want to do a chat about mining stocks in Argentina? And he agreed to. So thanks for joining us, mate.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man.
Okay, mate, I'm just very curious. So give us a little bit of your background and what you actually do for work.
Oh, I I have a formal engineering background, right? I got an undergraduate degree in electrical engineering with a telecommunications focus in 2020, and then I had some, soul-searching time, and in the meanwhile, kind of picked up finance and started reading a lot of stuff and reading books. And in between all of that and the macro content that we all consume online, I kind of got hooked on the commodities, not business, right? And of course, through that, I stumbled upon mining. And, for a couple of months, I was researching that stuff on my own, trying to learn and see what's going on. I didn't even have a brokerage account back then. And roughly, in the beginning of 21, I opened a brokerage account, I bought some stocks, whatever, made mistakes. Not too bad, thankfully. And I met a friend who introduced me to my current CEO at the newsletter I work. So in the summer of 21, I had two interviews with Lobo, who is the CEO of our independent speculator newsletter, and basically got admitted to try out in the beginning as an intern. It didn't take long, so I became an analyst there basically, and I'm almost kind of full time there. I did some part-time work for a hedge fund as well. That was last year, but yeah, it has been a pretty wild 2 years for me, and that's the long story short, right?
Yeah, very interesting, mate. I especially like your Twitter account because you're not afraid to call people out on just when they're pumping the hell out of their own book and that kind of thing, which I take very kindly to because I do the same occasionally when I get bored on Twitter and I feel like just going down that path. But yeah, so at the moment we're both very interested in Argentina, just off the back of the new president coming in. I just recently did a site visit out to San Juan with Pampa Metals, which I'm looking forward to reporting on. I also know you're quite interested in them. Yeah, basically, what do we need to look for in these stocks that are exploring out there? Most of them are Canadian and they're listing on Canada exchanges and trying to raise money. And then they're exploring in San Juan, Argentina, where there's some porphyry clusters, they're known as. What should we look for as investors?
Are we talking strictly about the porphyry projects, or are we talking about San Juan in general or juniors in general?
Let's just talk about porphyry exploration. So any sort of any gold, copper gold exploration in San Juan. What do we need to look for in these companies that are trying to raise money, and just any advice with using your background?
Yeah, I would say if I had to give a quick answer, I would say two main things, and that's number one, people, and the second part is the rocks, right? And when I say the rocks, what I like to see, although I'm not a geo, but I like to think that I've learned plenty so far.
You're a very good armchair geo, mate. Seriously, I've come across a lot of different people claiming to know about geology especially on Twitter and social media. But you seem to be one that's caught my attention a lot because you seem to be. I thought I was talking to a geo a lot of the times in our exchanges. So yeah.
Look,
do you want to elaborate on that?
That's almost exclusively regarding the porphyries. So yeah, I'm exactly getting to this point. Regarding the rocks, what I like to hear and see, especially when you're in the beginning, when you look at the presentation of a company, you're supposed to be able to figure out if the guy who made the presentation, if he cares. That's the first thing, right? You see how well it is done or not. And usually off of the website and off of the corporate deck, you can decide usually whether or not to invest more of your time into a certain story, right? But back strictly to the rocks, I like to hear a coherent geologic thesis, right? And what I mean with this is, of course, it depends on the stage of the project or whether it's been drilled or not. But a coherent geologic thesis would be something that strictly and plainly outlines the next steps for the project, and also shows you how much money is needed for that. And so in a nutshell, that would be it regarding the rocks. And the first thing that I had mentioned, people, well, that's more of a holistic thing, and it serves best to have contacts in the industry and people you trust and know, when you don't know the names on the board, you don't know the names in management, to ask around and see what they're about, and if they don't have any, say, skeletons in the closet from earlier, right? So
that's very interesting.
those would be the two main things. But I wouldn't say that there are strict rules to look at juniors in general, because it's more of an art than a science, right? And a lot of things that and this is also why I refrain from you say that sometimes I call out stuff on Twitter, right? Well, a lot of people call out stuff that they don't know much about, because some things can look good, look bad, on surface, but when you take in the context of what's been happening with that company, maybe during that period where the said bad, hypothetical bad thing happened, it could be completely justified. So what I like to do, and my point is, everything needs to be taken in context. So there are no strict rules based on which you can assess like whether this is worth speculating on or maybe investing in, depending again on the stage of the company, right? But early stage, especially exploration, is more of a speculation and a gamble and a kind of a probabilities game than legit investing.
Yeah, let's go back to the rocks and how we actually explore for minerals in around the world. Well, let's talk about Argentina specifically.
Oh, yeah.
Just so the process is basically Australians do not like a porphyry story in South America. So
yeah,
that means that all the funding basically comes from Canada. So they put out private placements, and it's like, how would you go about explaining the process there in Canada? I'm not as familiar with it as I am in Australia. So as far as I know, Canada is very important for South America. So do you want to talk about what some of the processes there?
Well, I'm perceiving Canada as more of a, let's say, an insider's game. Not in the legal sense, definitely not that, but more of an insider's game than Australia. And there are different preferences between the two markets that I kind of noticed, and this shouldn't be just me. I've heard similar comments as well, where for some reason lately Australians like to reward stories that are kind of peculiar, and peculiar in the sense, maybe even in the sense of the commodity that the story is focused on, right? Some exotic metals, rare earths, nickel PGMs, right? Well, we can all remember Chalice mining and what happened to that.
Oh yeah.
But how hard that was pushed. So everybody loved it, right? So yeah, I mean, for some reason Australians are not crazy about porphyries, and I also noticed a couple of really impressive Aussies, like the Mines of Money guys, who mentioned that they're not just them, and maybe they didn't say it this way, but basically there are not many copper options in Australia, right? So everybody, regarding copper, everybody's kind of looking towards Canada. And on that side, let's say of the pond, right? Everybody, I think that the Lundin companies, which are exactly in San Juan, have shaped the market in a pretty meaningful way and in a big way in the last, basically since 2020, right? Since COVID. Because in my eye, what gets rewarded the most are just huge holes. And by huge holes, I would say 600, 700, 800 meters and plus. Especially if it's a porphyry story, it's going to get, like, one way or another, somebody is going to end up mentioning philo, right?
Oh yes.
So yeah, so that's what's the, let's say, the flavor of the Canadian market and what most people care about. Of course, you can have some successes like Reunion Gold, right, in Guyana, and G2 Goldfields and similar things. But what I think generates the most interest and especially among the retail crowd are big holes and just, you know, I would say huge size potential, right, in the projects, and usually that leads to porphyries in South America.
In San Juan province in Argentina, which is the porphyry hotspot at the moment, especially the Visuna district, the flagship project there right now is Filo, and there's another one. Well, that Filo's plus $1 billion market cap. It's NPV of 1.3 billion or something, and then you've got Luna Huasi, which is NGX.
Yes, that's NGX's new discovery, actually. The main discovery that NGX has actually has had for quite a bit is Los Helados. That's also in the Vicuna. Yes, Los Helados is on the Chile side. I can refresh my memory, but I never paid a lot of attention to the border there, except for the fact that Filo is kind of it's more on the Argentinian
It's very
side,
interesting you mentioned that. It's very interesting you mentioned that because you've also got another explorer, Sendero, which is exploring in the next province, literally 6 kilometers away.
There are basically
Filo,
there are a couple of players, not couple, several actually, because multiple. So there you have Filo, you have the London companies, right? You have Filo, you have NGX, you had Jose Maria, right? You had Jose Maria. You have London Mining operating a bit to the north and in Chile. But there's Sendero that you mentioned. By the way, I don't own Sendero, but I do think they will have a discovery. And I have no problem saying that, right? There's a bit of fraud around the stock, but I do think that they're going to have a discovery.
Really?
So
that's
Sendero,
interesting. Right? I want to hear more because I invest in, disclaimer, I'm holding a little bit of Sendero. But a red flag for me is that it's in La Rioja province, which is historically...
Yeah, you did tell me that. You did tell me that.
But it's literally 6 kilometers away from, you know, $1 billion Filo, and it's long strike and a lot of indicators there. But bottom line, they still don't have a discovery. They're drilling right now. The likelihood, I don't care what anyone says. You're drilling, you don't have a discovery. The likelihood is they don't. And things
generally speaking, yes.
Generally speaking, but then you come down to the south of San Juan province, where I've just been, and you've got some giants just sitting there as well, which, like, for instance, El Pachon, which is owned by Glencore, literally just sits there. I think it's been around for I don't know how many years. I'm going to say 50. And Glencore is still holding on to it, and they're maintaining roads, and they have, you know, infrastructure there to keep drilling. And it surprised me actually how much attention they're still paying to this project. And I don't know if you know anything about that region at all where I've just been.
I kind of do, but I don't know much about Glencore's project except that it's been sitting and that it's huge. And it's definitely not the only one. Definitely not.
You've got Alta there as well, which is
you're mentioning that, but that's not in the Vicuña district. So I would just take a step back. So we have a pre-IPO basically in Mogotes that's there directly south of Filo. I don't really have a strong opinion about that, but I think it's supposed to be IPO this year, right? So there's another player there. There is to the west, a bit to the west, that's on the Chile side. There's the Awalé Resources with their I think it's Sobek or something like that. I forgot the name of the project, but Awalé has some land there as well. So, you know, everybody is kind of trying to be a satellite of Filo, more or less, in the Lundins, right?
Exactly.
I've stopped paying that much attention to these Lundin names here personally, because most of the stuff has already happened, except for the new Luna Huasi discovery that the NGX has made. It may be, you know, that Filo goes again this year like above 3 billion or whatever, but sorting all of the things out that need to be sorted for those actually Filo is the main question, right? There are a lot of things to be taken care of first before the project can officially go into the engineering stage. And that involves like a ton of stuff. Like that involves, you know, Milei, changing Argentina from the ground up, more or less, figuring out how the border, it's not a dispute, but how the border is going to be handled, because, you know, the deposit is like on the other, on one side and the other side as well. And there are a bunch of things that are not that strictly project related and tangible that need to be taken care of before you can say, okay, this is actually going forward, right? I'm also not sure, you did mention the koalas text article on Substack, and shout out to the koala, by the way, about the district. I'm not sure if the Landins are going to have the muscle to do it on their own, right? They may be the ones, as the older folks from the family were, historically the ones to lay the groundwork for the district and the project to actually be able to be advanced. But Koala is saying that BHP may be an option to step in with capital, or maybe Saudi money. But I think that some other player who's even bigger than the Landins is going to have to step in eventually, and for this to move on. But yeah, back to my point, I'm personally not paying that much attention to this place anymore, because most of the things happened, barring from, again, okay, Sendero is there, there's Mogote is going to be IPO'd, except for those things, but I would pay attention to them even if they were in a different place. So yeah, I would say that regarding mainly the Philo and then NGX stocks. Sure, is there upside? Sure, especially if copper goes to $5, whatever. But it's not, say, a pure alpha story anymore. It's big enough to be considered beta, in my opinion.
I agree. And to go back to Mogote's.
Yeah, sorry, you were going south from there, right? Yeah.
No. That's great stuff, mate. It's all very interesting. I think one of the big factors coming up shortly that we should be paying attention to in the region is to see if Mogote's Metals can actually raise 12 million on Canadian markets with their private placement right now. Technically, that closed. Well, it was supposed to close at the end of January. I'm assuming they haven't filled it, and that's why.
What's the valuation?
20 million. So it's quite steep to start off with, right?
Not really, because of how much fraud there is, but
well, that's what you think.
I can tell you immediately what I think, and I have two things on my mind. When a team that supposedly has great rocks can't raise money, it's a people problem. So I have no idea. I'm not going to say that the people there are the problem, because I legit don't know anybody who's involved. I don't even know the names. But I would be, if I was, kind of heated up to maybe participate or buy the stock as soon as it IPOs, I would be doing some research on the people first and foremost. Because 20 million is actually not that steep of a valuation if you have, like, what they do have is like 7 targets, right? So they're directly south of Philo, and you're just supposed to stick a couple of holes in. So I'm not really sure if they can't raise 10, 12 million, and I assume that's Canadian.
What about the sentiment? What about the sentiment in the market? I think it's quite tough to raise money. So I assume that's
it's tough to raise money if you can't. Yeah, in my opinion, it's tough to raise money if you can't raise money generally. Yeah, fair. If you have good. And maybe so the other side of that coin would perhaps be that those chargeability targets they have are just just blobs.
Yeah, they look like just big.
So for example, let's say that you are trying to raise money from Sprott, right? You're going to talk to somebody who's a quote unquote a money person at Sprott, right? But your stuff is going to be forwarded to geologists, and then if they're interested, geologists are going to contact you, and then you're going to go at least have a technical call, and after the technical call they might even visit, they go more in depth, right? And actually I don't have any hands-on experience with Sprott, but I'm just making an example here. So it's going to be a pretty thorough look at the rocks by people who know rocks, and if you still can't get money for that, especially right next to Philo, then maybe something is wrong. Maybe I don't know.
It's just such a large amount to raise. Like, I know drilling in the Andes is very expensive. It's not like rolling a rig up side of the road in Western Australia. You got to put camps in at high altitude. You've got to build access literally on the side of mountains. You got to get a rock breaker in with your loader to make these. It's incredibly expensive. But like, just to stick a couple of holes, like, I don't know, you're not going to need 12 mil. So
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that's another question. Why are they raising 12 million, right? If
Yeah.
you know, for the first press program, they would be content with say 5. Say philo, right? If you have that one philo hole that's usually over a kilometer, right? That hole is, again, rule of thumb is 1 million US, one hole. So that's how much this stuff costs, right? 100. Pampa is paying about 500, 600, I think. But
That's my
you
reference.
know,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Pampas
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it has to be more for philo. I mean, for example, not to go out of Argentina here, but I was looking at actually I own some stock there, but it doesn't matter what the name is. But they're in Colombia, and it is helicopter supported drilling. I mean, the altitude is irrelevant. It's not high, but it's in a Colombian jungle, and so it was until they stopped doing work there, and they're looking for a partner now, but it was $1,000 per meter drilling. And that's insane, right?
Yeah, mate, I'm curious about that.
Well, I was actually up on that like 70 to 80%, and then I ended up selling a 15% loss because I'm an idiot. But so why I owned that was because for me it wasn't like kind of an obvious discovery. It it looked better than so for example, take Sendero, right? We're not pumping Sendero, and I'm not pumping it because I don't own it right now. But you do, right? So you know you like what I have to say. Sendero's La Peña target looks pretty good. It like you open a textbook, you see what the geologists write about porphyries, and you see like, holy shit, that's La Peña, right? But in this thing in Colombia looked maybe even better because there was, I would say, a lot of more copper in service. Like it was like just screaming drill me, right? And the stock was cheap enough for me to buy some, and it was up, but then it went down once probably, enough retail guys realized that maybe the company doesn't have legs because their work is too expensive. But there are some interesting stories, and regarding raising money, pertinent to what you asked and said about Mogotes. So there is I won't say the name. There is a private company that has a bunch of Colombian land, and they have raised tens of millions, man, for basically drilling Colombian jungles, and it's private, right? So my point with that is, and I don't know those guys either, never met anybody there, but my point with that is why, if Mogotes can't raise 12 million to drill, let's say in a quote unquote brownfield district, they can't do that. Maybe it's a people problem. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting, mate. Where did they raise that money for the Colombian stock? Where was that raised? In Canada?
Well, if the company is London based, but it's a private company. So where they raise money, I know that they have some Glencore support, they have some First Quantum supports as well. So if I had to guess, they got some money from majors, and the other are, I would say, usually, high net worth private investors.
What about Challenger? That's one I need to look at as well, which I want to do a review on. That's a gold explorer.
Let me check if. So I forgot the province of Challenger as well, but
It's in San Juan. It's in San Juan.
It is, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the other gold story I wanted to mention. So we're kind of taking a step away from porphyries here, but Challenger is, I wouldn't dare talk about the rocks here from the geologic point of view because I don't know, but I am pretty well in tune with the story and the project, especially because Queens Road Capital it has invested in Challenger, right? And I like stocks that go down for seemingly no reason. So I have paid attention to that. Disclaimer: I don't own it yet. Maybe I buy it, maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, Queens Road Capital invested. Warren Gilman invested in this, and I had already known about it before that. But then I took a harder look, and now it's entering the engineering stage. For most people and most of the market, that's going to be boring. But this is, if you were to take an interest in this, your choice would be binary in the beginning, and that's the answering the question of, do I see a mine in the making here or not? And my personal answer is yes, because they have a really high grade blob or actually more than one, parts of the deposit that are really high grade. So when you have those, that allows you to optimize the economics and maybe focus on those really high grade parts of your deposit first. And that helps the IRR, NPV, payback period, you name it, right? So they did put out a scoping study, and that scoping study was kind of based on a small version of the project that theoretically they could fund on their own. And they quote a lot of engineering and other engineering work that they want to do to optimize that and make it better. But I think, you know, extra drilling is going to make the deposit like probably cross 3 million ounces and get bigger and likely get better as well. So I do think there's a mine there. But if we were talking about the stock, I'm not sure yet. Especially because, you know, they're paying interest to Warren Gilman and QRC. And so, you know, who knows what happens in the meanwhile. And but this is one of takeover targets that I actually see in South America. Again, if Argentina has some good headlines and if it can be figured out, right?
Obviously, very important. Where do you see the most value in San Juan?
Interesting question, man. I have no idea. Maybe, I mean, I see the most value in the junior mining space. There are some, you know, some stocks, some companies that have projects that actually work and look solid, right? And nobody cares. It's a dead chart. I would say that, right? With the caveat that those companies don't have to raise a lot of money in the near term. So that would be a caveat there, a serious caveat. But if I had to answer that with just one thing, I would say just the really early stage shit codes. That's where most of the value is right now.
Do you think there's going to be a good reaction to releasing good long intervals of copper gold mineralization to the market in Canada at the moment?
Yes, and at this point, I think that's almost the only thing that you would get a reaction to. Another in the Canadian market, right? Another thing that I think would get a good reaction is if you have a promoted stock, so you already have a bunch of eyes on it, right? And it puts out some flashy high grade headline, right? It doesn't even matter that the results, the quality of the results is even less important. But if it's a flashy high grade headline, it can be a shorter interval, shorter haul that's going to get noticed and probably bought up. But you know, with the caveat that you probably need that stock to be promoted prior hand. But the long copper gold hits, that's what I think would get noticed either way. You know, I mean, you can just look, although that was a heavily promoted stock as well, but Hercules Silver, that, you know, that delivered in spades. Even though they don't really have a serious deposit in the making yet, but it's definitely a very interesting story geologically, and I think there's a pretty good probability there's serious upside there.
What do you think about this?
I don't own Hercules either, so.
All right, mate. What do you think about this? So Sendero has run up to about 28 million market cap. Doesn't have a discovery yet. Obviously drilling a really compelling porphyry target. Then in the south, you've got
4, actually. They're drilling 4, man. That's interesting. They're drilling 4 targets, actually.
I mean, currently they're drilling this one. So that's what I mean. First results will be returned from this La Peña target. But yeah, still that's likely part of the run up in the market cap. But let's go down south and take it back to Pampa Metals, which disclaimer, I own both of these. They're sitting on a discovery.
I own some Pampa for now as well. Yeah, I bought it. I actually posted about it on Twitter pretty much half an hour after I bought some.
Yeah, I want to get into more about them because I know you've been following the company closely. But first, I just want to hear your thoughts on this. So obviously, Sendero's run up to 28 million on some really compelling porphyry targets. In the south of San Juan province, you have Pampa Metals, who are drilling out a historic target and a project which has, I think, 4 drill holes in it with considerably, they're really good intercepts, to be honest, and they're playing it really safe with this program they're currently drilling. And they're sitting around, 10, 12 million market cap. Do you think there's a discrepancy there between the two, or that it's actually priced to where it should be?
Well, if you're just looking at it on a relative basis to Sendero, I would say no, because you can argue, okay, you have historic data here. You know that, again, there's a pretty good probability that the grades are going to be significantly better than any other porphyry thing you see on average, right?
Absolutely.
That's true. But you have to consider Pampa's history. That's one thing. And you have to consider that Sendero is a fresh story that nobody else, not nobody else, but nobody has a strong opinion on whether or not, like, there's no sour taste from that name, right? So it should kind of deserve more attention because it doesn't have a history of, again, failure, but in other places like Pampa has, and Pampa has optioned, actually Pampa optioned the Picanes project last year, like in October, right? So that's actually when Pampa became legit. And Sendero is a recent IPO, so there's less sour taste with it, and they have like 4 targets to drill. No results, of course. Some maybe historical holes that I can remember that I saw, but not really that relevant. So if we were just looking at it, relative 1-to-1 comparison, I would say that the valuations are kind of fine. But when you consider maybe buying both, I would be cautious with Sendero because of all the froth around it, and they have a couple of hard guys who are promoting the stock, which okay, nothing wrong with that, right? But if the first holes don't meet expectations, you're going to get a 50% drop easily.
That is exactly my point, because now the expectations are really high for them to hit a discovery. And, you have this walk-up porphyry target or not, you've still got to prove it in the results. And, like I keep saying, the odds are stacked against you. And absolutely, the promotion, it's been interesting to watch from an investor's point of view, the different levels of PR done by both companies. Sendero, obviously, hammering it. They've got, social media, they're doing interviews, they're doing YouTube, everything. It's and probably as a result, it's run up off a lot of that PR. And then you've got Pampa in the south, which have just done none of that, and they already have a discovery. Yes, there's talk around the discovery maybe being too small, but literally, how do they know? They've got bugger all drill holes in this thing. They have really, really good, compelling intercepts from straight drill holes. So it's been interesting to watch, and I just think that that disconnect.
So if somebody there's a I would say I would put in some pushback against the too small comments regarding Pampa, right? Because again, context. If this was a completely unknown area, it was a standalone asset that has nothing next to it, then yes, you could say, okay, on surface I don't see a huge anomaly, I'm not that into it, fine. But context is important here because Pampa has a shot at actually making a discovery and defining a deposit or two at surface, which would be super useful, if not necessary, for the next door project that Aldebaran owns, and that's the huge porphyry that called Altar, right? And Altar is probably going to need high grades as soon as possible in their mine life. And so that's what Pampa has a shot at, and until recently it was valued at like $0, right? So when they optioned the project, I didn't know much. I mean, I had been following Pampa, but I didn't buy the stock immediately because it, naturally you're kind of suspicious in the beginning. So I let it sit for a while, and I was looking at it, but back to my point, sorry. The context is important, where even if they have, say, quote unquote, only 300 million tons, right? Which would be considered small in this part of the world and for these geologic systems, that would actually maybe be of the perfect size, and it would be a much needed addition for next door Altar. And when we say next door, it's like literally next door, like you can see the thing next to it, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's a mountain range that separates them, but it's actually so close. Spatially, I was actually there. I was on the drill pad, and then see with the mountain that divides, but it's so close. And yeah, stone's throw away from a project with a significant resource.
Yes, yes. And so that's the context for Pampa, right? They might be sitting on a necessary asset for that project next door, which is much bigger, right? And you know, I own a small amount of stock in Aldebaran as well, but the reason why I own that is because basically Aldebaran is going to double tonnage at a higher grade, which is not something that you see. So I would be surprised that there's no reaction in the stock once they do that. And when I say double tonnage, please, you know, don't think it's 100%. That's rough math. When you look at what they're drilling out and what they've been doing on that deposit, it's going to get much bigger than it currently is on paper. But again, it's one of those assets that's never going to work unless you have $5 copper, or maybe even higher, right? So it's kind of a call option on copper, basically. And you know, with Pampa now next door, and you know, so another interesting thing regarding Pampa, which is again, context is super important, and you have a lot of intangible facts, right? And another one here is that Aldebaran was looking to acquire that asset, but they weren't willing to pay the price. And you know, it may end up proving to be a mistake that they didn't want to pay up for the option to acquire 100%. But we'll see. So yeah, that's the thing with Pampa. You know, they're sitting on something that might be the key to unlock the next door deposit. That's really big. So that's the point.
How did you feel about the vendor terms with Pampa taking over the project? I remember you mentioned to me that they look quite like it was. Obviously, it's not cheap, but not too bad.
Yeah, exactly. It's not cheap, especially the later cash payment, but that is years and years away. And I get so you know, the vendor there is, I think, definitely somebody who knows what they were selling, right? Especially because they didn't want to budge the price for Aldebaran, right? And Aldebaran's team they're serious people. And so if you know, the vendor knew what they were selling, and that data that exists on that project there, that it is valuable data. I mean, you basically have a de-risk discovery, man. And you know, there's one hole with really good grades that starts right from surface, and you know, you have the upside, let's say the green upside in Pekenes East, which yes, it is a smaller anomaly, but you never know what's at depth with these things.
I think they have the potential to have a really good news flow over the next couple of years.
They definitely do, yeah. And we can touch on again on porphyry rocks here. You know, Pekenes is interesting to me, and I might prove to be wrong here, you know, but it kind of looks like that type of pipe porphyry, quote unquote pipe, right? That's kind of vertical, but not that large in the horizontal extent. So what's interesting with this is that they are usually quite simple to follow up on with drilling, right? So you know, what happens, just a hypothetical scenario, let's say we have round 2 drilling, and the team says, okay, let's find out how deep this actually is, because you know, all the drilling that's going to be done now and in the near term will go to maybe what would be the deepest vertical level, maybe 700 meters or so,
maybe
right?
700 if they can. I reckon they can get 1,000 to 1,200 meters down hole with the current.
That would be cool. That would be cool. But imagine what you start getting. And again, you pretty much know where to drill, because it's like a vertical, right, body. And so you can push vertical holes into it, and you can go like more than 1 kilometer deep. So that would be some really good holes, especially for the Canadian market to see.
Yeah, I think early on they've got to get that those contacts of the actual intrusion to define, just so they know like a true width.
To orient themselves. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, in the early stages anyway, and then later on, they can probably.
I agree.
Vertical holes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very interesting story. Like, there was no surface expression on that target they're drilling now, so that's why I think Kenya's East is very interesting.
You never know until you drill, man. So this Colombia thing I mentioned, it's they made the discovery on the literally on the first hole, and the first hole went like 900 meters, right? But what's funny is you have a pile of copper on surface, like it's pregnant, right? But the actual mineralization started from about 100 meters deep. So you never know with these things. It's there are always there's always something to kick you in the nuts. That's to put it mildly.
It's such a tough game, exploration. Yeah. It's just with my background with gold, it's much tougher because you don't have these beautiful porphyry models. Gold seems to exist in just just very, very geological terrain. But now, with these porphyry models, you can sort of get.
But I would touch on one thing that I forgot, 5 minutes ago. What I mentioned, disappointment in drilling results off of prior promotion or whatever, or just too big expectations, right? There was a news release recently by Tectonic Metals. Again, disclaimer: I don't own it. So Tectonic is drilling in Alaska and this is pertinent to your comment on gold as well. They're drilling an intrusion-related gold deposit, and this is kind of similar to porphyry theory, but I guess the magma and the rocks that form that are completely different thing chemically, right? So there's no copper there, right? It's gold deposits, and so some comparables are Kinross's Fort Knox in Alaska, and deposits like that. So they're drilling a huge anomaly, and the stock was at over 40 million market cap when when they started drilling, and they do have some historic data. It's already a confirmed discovery and whatnot, right? So they put out the news release, and you basically get, if you know what you're looking at, you those numbers that you got what you expect, right? But the stock is down. I have to check again, but I'll just check on my other screen. So the stock is down, I would say about 50%. Yeah, around 50% or so. It's down something like that. And it's at 26 million Canadian now. So it's still like a relatively healthy, junior explorer, relatively healthy, because their drilling is quite expensive there. Like, this is super remote in Alaska, right? And so the idea is that they're going to keep doing more of the same thing. And I'm not sure that they're going to get a lot of interest in that, because frankly, I don't think that the retail market understands what they're actually doing. So maybe big holes could fix that, like drilling 500, 600 meters of depth, and they put out some big numbers, but the problem is that their grades are not great. And this is kind of supposed to be heap leached. You know what heap leaching is, of course, but I'm not sure if viewers know. So it's a simple way and cheap way to process gold, more or less. And there's precedent for this at Fort Knox that Kinross owns and whatnot. So that's the idea. But you already see a couple of extra steps that somebody who's a retail investor or a speculator or whatever needs to understand in order to hold huge shares, right? So once you got that news release, you had big expectations prior hand, and in that news release you didn't really get any crazy numbers, and boom, you're down 50%, right? So now you are praying that that team is going to be able to raise another round of money. I'm not sure that they need the money immediately, but it's probably not far. I didn't check their financials. I just look at the project. I've been following that. So it's an interesting story, and there's definitely, this is an unreasonable thing to say, but there's at least 5 million ounces there, right? At least, because it's really huge. And there's no reason to expect that the depth extent is not really deep, like 500, 600, 700 meters, right? It's a forward-looking statement, but nobody cares because the results are not flashy, and it's a bad market. And okay, there's the really factual and tangible context of, like, this is super remote in Alaska, and you probably need some coherent higher grades to make it work. But you know, again, this company is like sitting on, say, at least a 5 million ounce south potential, and nobody cares, right? Because the results are not something that you are going to get hyped up on and just buy stock based off of that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to get at with Sendero. But like you said, you were able to explain that off. You think their targets are very compelling, which I do too. That's why I've got stock in them. But I just don't like a stock that starts to run up for actual results and assays that return to the market. I just think the expectation is just it's just there for it to be fantastic. And I've been burnt with it a few times in Australia with some stock, and I'm just very cautious around it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see when
there was a funny Australian story. It's called Cobre Limited, I think. It's Cobre something, right? And that's they drilled for in Botswana. They drilled for I think those are sedimentary copper deposits, and they drilled for that next to the I think that's right next to the Khoemacau mine that the Chinese bought recently. They kind of overpaid for that, but that's a different topic. So yeah, that project is next to that, right, in Botswana, and the stock literally went 10x on XRF numbers. You can look at the chart, man. I'm too lazy to pull it up now, but one interesting fact, actually an anecdote in this, is that during that run up, and before they actually published essays, I literally had the stock pitched to me on Telegram. So yeah, I have an anonymous account. The guy's telling me about Cobre Limited, right? So yeah, this is how far these things can go.
So let me guess. So obviously they had PXRF results come out, and then they assayed it, and it didn't match.
Oh yeah, it just didn't match, right? So yeah, I mean you can look at the chart. So this was Q3 22, right? Yeah. So it went from, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 cents Australian to 40 cents, right? And then it went back down to 16. Then it jumped to 23 in late 22, and now we are at 5.7 cents Australian. So what another interesting thing regarding this is, so the obvious rule of thumb for anybody is like, don't buy stock based on visuals, right? But I'm kind of hypocritical here because I basically bought Pampa based on visuals, right? And this is not based on like, oh shit, like there's a bunch of yellow stuff here, that's probably copper, which promoters of some other company do recently. But this was based on basically porphyry, let's say, knowledge, right? And what they put out, we're back to Pampa again, but just one comment. What I put out in the drill core, like the news release was obviously promotional, but in my eyes, it's justified because they already have the historic data to back it up, right? And so what I put out is just, basically it is simply said, it's like the textbook stuff that you want to see in the center of the system. So yeah, that's what kind of pushed me to at least get a starter stake in the stock.
Yep. No, that's
But again, context, right? The rule is don't buy based on visuals, especially if it's a greenfields thing. But in this case, like, I felt that it was justified.
So I know a lot of smart investors that just won't invest anything until there's a discovery or until there's results coming back. Yeah. That's why I like this risk reward with Pampa, because they had a discovery. They're doing a very safe drill program, and yeah, it was valued very low. So that's why I like it. But like I said, disclaimer, I hold it.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking a lot about what you just said. So pertinent to pre-discovery, quote unquote, investment, right? I'm not sure. Of course, my sense is that most of the mining billionaires were made in bulk mining, right? Iron, I guess, coal, right?
Yeah. It is.
So those huge companies. I mean, Andrew Forrest comes to mind, and guys like that. But for example, when you take Friedland, right? Who is Friedland? I mean, what he did was basically discover greenfield stuff, right? Made greenfield discoveries and pushed it maybe to get sold or pushed it towards production, right? And the guy is a billionaire. So, I mean, if you get somebody telling you, not you personally, but in general, that, you know, and this is usually people who are, you know, horny about value investing and are like disciples of Warren Buffett or whatever. You get somebody to tell you to completely ignore, let's say, the earliest part of the curve in mining, right? They automatically told you to ignore the part of the curve where most of the value actually gets created,
the upside,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of upside maybe in buying tangible and de-risk stuff in down markets. That's fine. But we are talking about, say, alpha generation here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you have guys in copper or, you know, in non-bulk mining, in hard rock mining? How do you have guys, you know, become billionaires off of this? They certainly didn't wait for, I don't know, a pre-feasibility study to buy stock, right? They created.
Yeah. This is exactly why people were so attracted to investing in junior explorers, because of this insane upside you can have. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course. And so, you know, when I was thinking about this, my point was, like, this guy that created this company, say 19 years ago, like, they had to know something that somebody else didn't, right? So by definition, there is alpha to be generated in the business, you know. So the next question was, okay, how do I figure out how to maybe get some of this alpha, right? What do they know that I don't? What do they know that nobody else does, right? What do they care about that nobody else cares about? So yeah, I think these are the questions that, you know, somebody should be asking. But you usually get like, oh, especially, you know, I had a couple of guys. I can think of one guy, but I didn't hear this just once. They promote the shit out of stock. It ends up like 97% down 2 years later, right? And they are shameless enough to come and tell you, oh, you know, like, that's how this game works, because you never know what's going to happen. And I'm like, your job is literally to expect what's going to happen, right? And if you pretend you're an analyst and you have something go even 70% down on you and you don't have an explanation, you're a retard. Like, you know, you're not good at your job. And I don't care, because if you say, oh, nobody knows what somebody is going to drill into, yeah, of course you don't know exactly. But if your expectations were never actually met, even in the ballpark sense, then you are doing something wrong, right? So yeah, I don't really accept that somebody, you know, just brushes off the losses and says, oh, you know, mining is risky. No, it's not that risky. You know, it's, you know, obviously risky enough for you to not care about doing any hard work.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah,
it's just a very risky game.
No,
I like it.
I'm sorry for that little rant, man.
I like it, mate. I like hearing different thoughts on where you can generate alpha and investing, because cyclical sectors that, you know, go through a pattern over time, which is, it's where you have a question of when, not if scenario. So you just got to have a hell of a lot of patience to sit back, and a hell of a lot of time on your hand to just sit on these things for years and then let the actual investment scenario play out. So yeah, it's interesting. I've always got a portion of my portfolio allocated to the junior space, just from my background in geology. But yeah, it'll never take up a huge amount, because I see it as quite risky.
Of course, yeah,
as extremely risky. Yeah.
And, you know, regarding the sit on your hand stuff, you're probably referring to uranium, right?
Yeah, it's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. I made some money in uranium, but not nearly as much as I should have. But I have a justification for myself, because the time when I was supposed to be buying, I borderline had, you know, no knowledge about the sector, and this was 2020. So I did have doubles, a couple of doubles, which I sold, then bought back, had another double, right? It's cool, but you know, didn't make as much money as I should have. But what's been the funniest to me regarding uranium, and don't worry, I'm not going to go into a rant.
Go for it.
Yeah, have been all the guys who have been, like, say, quote unquote, constructively bearish, right? When it was kind of obvious that the you know, all the entire case for uranium was mounting up pretty heavily, you know, during 2023. So what I found the funniest, one of the funniest things last year were the guys who were just, had a bad coping issue with it, because it's essentially, it is, intellectual arrogance, where you see a bunch of people that, you're somebody who thinks that's smart, right? And you see a bunch of people for whom you think that they are much stupider than you are. And they are all saying that uranium is going to go up. And naturally, because you're arrogant, you're not going to agree, right? Because you think you're smarter than them. So what happened was, like, what happened with uranium last year. And by the way, our newsletter really killed it on that end. So, and this was pretty much all Lobo's call. He really kicked ass on that last year. Yeah. So that was funny with uranium to me last year.
I think I find it incredibly funny. I try and stay away from the topic because I don't like a lot of the noise that comes with it on social media. It really pisses me off. I've got a lot of people that just like hide, and I don't want to hear from. There's maybe one or two quality accounts on it, and they're the ones I keep a close eye on, because I've been invested in the sector for, I'm going to say, I bought my first stock 6 years ago or something like that. And I've just held it. I haven't sold any of that stuff. So
look, so I think that the majority of people, so exactly, pertinent to that, I think that the majority of people who make money in mining are the ones who are let's say the beta seekers, right? And they're not necessarily the guys who are mining experts, but they are the guys who bought uranium 6 years ago, right? So you didn't need to be uranium genius or a mining genius 6 years ago to buy Bannerman, for example, right?
No, you just had to get told for me, it was just understanding a very simple thesis of supply demand fundamentals, and then saying, okay, if I have patience here, this might just work out for me. And that was just the whole thesis right there. Nothing.
So that was more of a, let's say, a macro trade, right? And I think, just a side note, I think that the next big bull market is going to be in gold, right? And maybe not this year, maybe next year, whatever. But that's the next thing to really explode, because, again, in conjunction with what you said regarding raising money and the tough market, especially in Canada, it can't go on forever. I mean, I would love it if it's lasted for at least 2 more years, because I see companies that are supposed to die, I see them dying, right? And it would be good, but I don't think it's going to be another 2 years of hell, even though it should. It would be really good. A bunch of people need to just hang their sneakers up or boots or whatever and not do junior mining. That's a bunch of companies just shouldn't exist. So that's that. Yeah. Again, a small little rant, but regarding the beta seekers, sorry. Most people who make money, right, are those guys. But what you said, that you deem super risky, like junior investing and like hands-on mining investing, that's more of the alpha seeking behavior, and strategy. And so that's really hard. And I really admire anybody who has, who is an active manager and has been investing pretty much strictly in mining for a really long period. That's really admirable. But what I think that the guys who generate the most alpha and the biggest amount of alpha in the mining market are the royalties and streamers guys. They are the capital providers, and you don't necessarily need the I mean, of course you do, but not necessarily. You don't need hedge funds or funds to provide capital for whatever. You have the guys basically at Franco and Wheaton kicking ass on that, and some other royalties, smaller ones as well, and companies like those. You have Warren Gilman with Queens Road doing convertibles as well. So you have a wide variety of capital providers, right? But if we're talking only about quote unquote strictly equity investing, the fund managers who have existed for a long time, that's super admirable. I mean, of course, especially if they outperformed, and the guys who have existed for a while, I think that, I'm not sure about the data, but I think that there's not a small percentage of them who didn't really make money, right? So a good chunk of them actually made money, which is interesting. Cool.
Yeah, thanks very much for coming on, Vukasin. I really appreciate it. Short notice, mate, and let's do this again and see where or when we've got some results back, especially from San Juan, and we can talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, maybe we can go hands-on through some news release or something like that.
Sounds great. Sounds great, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Awesome.